When I stepped inside, my mother was in tears and my father was shaking. And there, in the center of the living room of the home I bought my parents' anniversary gift, a $425,000 coastal mansion, stood my sister's husband. Mark pointed at my father like he was scolding an intruder. "This is my house," he snapped. "Get out." My father's fingers curled around the dining chair, his knuckles pale, his dignity barely holding on. My mother whispered, "Please, not this again." Then I walked in. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Mark's smugness withered instantly. My sister stiffened, eyes darting like she'd just witnessed a ghost. They hadn't expected me home that weekend. That was their first mistake. I still remember when I first met Mark. Back then, he was charming, one of those men who shook your hand too warmly, too eagerly, as though trying to distract you from what his eyes really wanted. My sister Hannah practically glowed whenever he stood beside her. After years of unstable jobs and broken ambitions, she saw him as her chance at stability. I tried to believe it too. I helped them. I bought them their first place. I loaned money for his startup quietly, because peace was more important to me than praise. It took time, too much time, to see the pattern. Mark didn't orbit love. He orbited opportunity. The betrayal didn't begin loudly. It started with a detailed photocopy of the deed I'd sent my parents. The signature box was darker than the rest, too perfect. Then a bank manager called, puzzled, asking why the title reassignment hadn't processed. Reassignment to who? I asked. The answer was one name: Hannah. When I confronted her, she swore she had no idea what I was talking about, her voice steady, overly steady. Then later, she mentioned the renovation timeline. Renovations on a house they did not own. That's when the truth clicked into place. Mark had forged my parents' signatures and manipulated Hannah into signing things she didn't read. He told her it was a family transfer for better tax handling. My parents, too trusting, too eager to avoid conflict, believed whatever made their daughter smile. By the time I dug through the paperwork, Mark had already filed a claim of ownership, but he'd slipped. He used the wrong deed number, the one tied to my living trust. My trust, my account, my property. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Revenge isn't a sprint, it's timing, patience, and precision. I went to my lawyer. Quietly, we structured the case like endgame chess, deliberate, airtight. The mansion was protected under a trust that required my notarized approval for any transfer. What Mark did wasn't just immoral. It wasn't even just fraudulent. It was a felony, but prison wasn't my goal. Not then. Humiliation was. So I let him think he'd succeeded. I even sent flowers when they moved in. "Congratulations on your new home." The card read. Hannah texted, "Thank you for understanding." I replied, "Always." For months, they hosted dinners, posed for photos, bragged online about their seaside blessing. Mark strutted through the halls like he'd built them with bare hands. Then came my parents' 50th anniversary. I told my parents to let Mark and Hannah plan it at the mansion. I promised them only one thing: trust me. The night arrived, thick with sea air and deceit. Investors, co-workers, friends, everyone Mark hoped to impress filled the place. When I walked in, the room froze mid-conversation. Mark stiffened. "You're not supposed to." "I know." I cut in. I set a black folder on the counter. My lawyer stood beside me like a shadow. "These," I said, opening it, "are the original trust documents. The authentic ones." Mark went pale. "And this," I continued, sliding papers toward him, "is the evidence. Digital forgeries, altered signatures, wire transfers, all logged, all traceable." His knees wavered. My sister pressed a hand against her lips. My mother clung to her handkerchief, shaking. I placed one last page in front of him. "Effective today," I said. "You're trespassing. The police will arrive shortly. Unless you'd prefer to hand the keys over quietly." He looked around at the guests, at Hannah, at my parents, watching everything he'd tried to steal collapse in front of him. When the officers arrived, I only had to sign twice. They took him out the door while he sputtered, "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly. I already did. "That's why this is over." After he was gone, Hannah broke down, whispering, "I didn't know." I swear I didn't know. Maybe she didn't. But silence is its own form of betrayal. I left her a symbolic key on the table, not the real one. Buy your own place, I told her. Earn it. As for my parents, I transferred the mansion fully into their names, no trusts, no loopholes. They deserved security, not protection from their own family. The next morning, when I visited, my father stood on the porch watching the sunrise. He said quietly, "You didn't just save the house, you saved our dignity." I didn't answer. Some victories don't require words. I stepped toward the edge of the deck, let the wind whip against my face, and watched the waves pound the shore, violent, cleansing, absolute. That's the thing about betrayal. It teaches you to stop reacting and start engineering. I didn't destroy him because I was angry. I destroyed him because he mistook kindness for weakness, and he'll never make that mistake again.